Welcome to Nutrition for Sports Massage. This is a brief overview of food and nutrition and lifestyle factors that can impair or hinder wound healing. As sports massage therapists, we aren't qualified to be able to provide nutritional support, meal plans, or prescribe food. But what we can do, and what we think is really important for us to do, is to discuss nutrition with our clients from a wound healing perspective. Nutrition can play a really big part in how our clients heal after injury or surgery. So it's important to have that conversation and to recommend types of foods that are beneficial and will help wound healing. What we will cover. We're going to begin with discussing why nutrition is important for healing, the lifestyle factors that can hinder wound healing, the main macro and micronutrients to consider for our clients who are experiencing an injury. We're going to have a brief recap on the phases of healing, but for more detailed recap, head to your theory work for the sports massage. And then we're going to discuss what foods can help in each phases of wound healing to recommend for our clients. And then lastly, how to discuss nutrition with your clients from a sports massage perspective. So why is nutrition important for healing? Well, it may help manage inflammation in the body. It can support the immune function of how our systems work. And it could also support tissue repair and regeneration. It's really important, and it helps all of the phases of wound healing work at its best. Factors that can impair wound healing. The first one is lack of oxygen. Now, oxygen is a really important molecule for us as humans, but from a tissue and wound healing perspective, oxygen helps improve the production of granulated tissue, which is part of the healing process after a wound or surgery. It also ensures the resistance against any infections. It's an important part of the wound healing process. Smoking. Smoking can play a huge part in the impairment of wound healing. It reduces the amount of oxygenation that can occur within tissues. It can also reduce the immune response by affecting the leukocytes, which then makes the body more susceptible to infections. It can affect and impair how fibroblasts work, reduces the collagen production within the tissues, which then can lead to less tensile tissue post-wound. So it's a really important thing to discuss with your clients if your clients are smoking, because it can have a detrimental effect on how their body heals and repairs. Stress is a big factor that can impair wound healing. And we talk about oxidative stress briefly later on in the presentation, but this diagram came from a research paper that looked at how psychological stress can then impact and impair wound healing. And what the paper suggests is that it affects different hormones such as oxytocin, but also the health behaviours of people that are experiencing psychological stress. And what they proposed was, or what they found was that by the effect on those different hormones and other health behaviours, then affected the healing process and the tissue healing phases directly by ways such as reducing cytokines in the area, so affecting the inflammatory response, reducing the amount of oxygen to the area, and also increasing the risk of infection. Alongside that, if your client has been experiencing lots of psychological stress, then their health choices may be less beneficial to them as well. So they may have an effect on their sleeping habits. They may be reducing the amount of exercise that they're doing, making poor food choices. So it's worth discussing with them what's happening within their lives that can be impacting that stress. Aging is another factor that can impair wound healing. As clients begin to age, the skin and different tissues will begin to be less elastic, so the less elastin that's being produced. Collagen production is also reduced, and then also blood flow to an area is also reduced, reducing the amount of cells that can arrive to help the healing process. Poor nutrition. And as we mentioned earlier in the presentation, poor nutrition can affect the immune system response and create poor healing, so poor tissue restructuring and regeneration post-injury or surgery. So let's begin to look at the different micro and macronutrients that are required for good quality tissue healing. Before we look at the detail of the different types of nutrients that help healing, let's just consider the energy expenditure in total during the healing process. It's important that we recommend that our clients eat a good total amount of food during any wound healing that is taking place post-injury, post-surgery. It is not the time for any calorie restricting diets or food group restricting diets during this time. In the wound healing process, energy expenditure may be increased by 50 and up to 50% depending on the different type and severity of the injury. So the body requires more energy, so you want your clients to be having a good amount of food throughout each day and over the course of the week to manage that rather than reducing their diets. And any restriction of energy will interfere with the wound healing process. So it's important to discuss with your clients what they are eating and how often and in what quantities. So let's begin with the macronutrients required for good quality tissue healing and recovery. And the first one we're going to discuss is protein. Protein and amino acids. Protein is our body's building block, so it's an important macronutrient for tissue healing and repair. It's made up of amino acids, and there are 20 amino acids. And what these do is they provide structure and strength for our tissues. They also make many hormones, enzymes, immune system chemicals, and transport proteins around the body. Our body can make 12 amino acids, but the other 8 need to be obtained from our food. And there is also 8 conditionally essential amino acids, so 8 of the 20, that are really important to help with rebuilding tissues. And here is a table of all the different types of amino acids. Now, it's important to focus on your client having a good variety of protein to cover all of these different types of amino acids. So the first column is the 8 essential amino acids that must be obtained by their diet. The next one is 4 additional ones which are important for infants and growing children. And the last one is the 8 conditionally essential amino acids, which are the ones that are really important for healing. It is important to note that most foods will have some amount of protein in them. Some have a lot more and some have a lot less. And there is lots of resources and research about the amount of protein in foods online and within books and papers also. But what we can discuss with our clients is about the importance of getting a variety of different types of foods within their nutrition, within their diet, to cover the different types of amino acids they need to function day to day, but also to help with tissue healing and repair. So here are just some of the examples of foods that contain protein. We have fish, eggs, broccoli, avocado, meats, and also beans and legumes. The next macronutrient we're going to discuss, which is an important one for tissue healing, is fats. Here are the main 3 different types of fat molecules that we need within our nutrition. And it's important for our clients and ourselves to have a good variety of all 3. The first one is saturated fat, which is the fat that's found usually solid at room temperature, and it commonly gets a bad reputation. Foods that contain saturated fats are butter, coconut, cream, dark chocolate, fatty meats, and whole fat dairy. The next is monounsaturated, and these are liquid at room temperature. And you'll find them in foods such as nuts, like Brazil nuts, almonds, cashews, and peanuts, egg yolk, avocados, and chicken and duck fat. And the next one is polyunsaturated fats. And this is also liquid at room temperature, and it's the omega-3 and the omega-6 fatty acids, which we're going to discuss in a little bit later. And this is found in foods such as oily fish, flax seeds, chia seeds, pine nuts, walnuts, and sunflower seeds. So when we're looking at all the different types of fat molecules, it's important to tell your clients to have a good variety of all three. So looking at the properties of fats, dietary fat has some key functions for wound healing. So it's a really important macronutrient for healing. It's the most energy dense macronutrient, so really good for that energy intake during a higher level of energy expenditure during tissue healing. It forms cell membranes, the brain and the nervous system. It also helps transport the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, which are really important for tissue healing, which we'll discuss later in the presentation. And it also gives us omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, which are the polyunsaturated fats that we cannot produce ourselves, so we have to get that from our food. The omega-3 and the omega-6 fatty acids are considered anti-inflammatory, so really important for the healing process. They help the molecules that help regulate processes such as immunity and inflammation. So they can therefore help with things such as dilation of blood vessels during the early phases of healing, helps lower inflammation, helps prevent blood coagulation, and also decrease in pain. So a really important part of that early phase of tissue healing as an anti-inflammatory. And here are some of the examples of where clients can obtain omega-3s and omega-6s from. We have salmon, oily fish such as mackerel, pine nuts, walnuts, sunflower seeds, and flax seeds. Next, we're going to discuss the micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, and also water. Vitamins are essential and required for all processes within the body. They are often cofactors for enzymes, which means they help some enzymes to function. So they join together with other enzymes to help that process. And there are two different types: fat-soluble vitamins, which is transported by fats, and water-soluble vitamins transported by water. So let's begin to look at the different types of vitamins that are really essential and important for phases of wound healing. So the first one is vitamin A, and it comes in two different types: retinol, which is found in animal produce, and carotenoids, which is found in vegetable produce such as beetroots. It's a fat-soluble vitamin, and it enhances and supports the early inflammation phase and also assists in collagen formation. The next is vitamin C, which is found in lots of colourful fruits and vegetables. It's a water-soluble vitamin, and it enhances the neutrophil and lymphocyte activity in the early phases of wound healing, so in the bleeding and inflammation phase. And it's also another vitamin that helps improve and plays an important part of collagen synthesis. Next, we have vitamin D, which is found in foods such as fish, egg yolks, and mushrooms, and it helps with immune system function and also regulates blood pressure as well. There's types of vitamin D that you can potentially get from the sun at certain parts of the year in certain areas, but we're just focusing on the nutrition side where you can find that in those types of foods. Next is vitamin E, which is found in nuts and seeds. It's also another fat-soluble vitamin, and what this does is helps express the immune and inflammatory cells in the early parts of the wound healing phases. Next is vitamin K, which is found in lots of leafy green vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, and also meat and dairy. Another fat-soluble vitamin, and this helps with the blood clotting, so an important vitamin in the early phases of wound healing. Next is minerals. So minerals is another micronutrient that helps build structures such as teeth and bones. It helps regulate bodily fluids. It also helps with cofactors to enzymes to help them function, just as vitamins did, but it also acts as enzymes themselves. There are two different types. The first one is macrominerals, which are needed in larger quantities within the body, and the other one is microminerals, which are minerals that the body just needs in trace amounts. So let's look at the different minerals that are essential and important to help with good quality wound healing. The first one is copper, which is found in beans and legumes, cacao, mushrooms and seafood as examples, and that's responsible for helping with energy production, the cross-linking of collagen and elastin, so the new tissue regeneration, and helps regulate protein synthesis, so that rebuilding, so it's an important mineral. The next one is magnesium, which is found in your dark leafy greens, nuts and seeds, whole grains, and beans and legumes. And that's responsible for wound healing and cell migration, and also protein synthesis. So again, another really important mineral for wound healing. Manganese is a mineral that's found in foods such as whole grains, nuts, berries, and pineapple. It's an antioxidant mineral, so it supports the work of antioxidants. And it's also a synthesizer of proteoglycan, which is a compound found in those connective tissues, which are required for wound healing. Phosphorus is a mineral found in beans and legumes, nuts and seeds, and it's important for bone formation, energy transfer. We also have selenium, so another important mineral for wound healing, which is found again in nuts, seeds, whole grains, poultry, red meat, and eggs, and it's an antioxidant mineral. And then finally, zinc, which is found in lots of the above, so beans, legumes, nuts, seeds, whole grains, eggs, poultry, mushrooms, beef, lamb, and pork. And it's a synthesizer of protein and also DNA, so a great mineral for wound healing. So let's discuss water briefly as part of wound healing. So water generally makes about 55 to 60% of human adults. So it's important to keep ourselves hydrated as much as possible. And it's important to talk about your clients and how much they are hydrating. So water to keep hydrated can come in forms of water itself, through fruits and vegetables, and then herbal teas. It's important to check how much caffeine your clients are drinking, because that will often dehydrate them. So some of the important roles of water are transportation, so really important for transportation of cells, vitamins and minerals to areas to help with wound healing. Lubrication of tissues, so if connective tissues is dehydrated, they become sticky and stuck, and that can impair movement, so it's important to understand that as a massage therapist. Helps regulate temperature, helps provide minerals, which we know minerals are really important for that wound healing process, helps catalyze chemical reactions within the body, and also dissolve substances. So when we're discussing water with our clients, ask them how much they are drinking day to day, what types of fluids they are intaking within their body, and ensure they are drinking enough water for their body. And then other anti-inflammatory foods to consider, we have turmeric. So curcumin is the property of turmeric, and it's been shown to have lots of anti-inflammatory properties. So they can add that into foods, into lattes, as a good anti-inflammatory spice. Garlic inhibits the inflammatory enzymes. And bromelain, which is found in pineapple, so another good anti-inflammatory food. So the next part of this presentation is looking at nutrition and the different phases of wound healing. We'll begin by just recapping the phases of wound healing. If you'd like a more detailed recap, then head to your sports massage theory, which will go through each of the phases individually. And then we're going to look at which nutrition will support the different phases. So here are the different phases of tissue healing, and it's all about tissue regeneration and repair. And there are four main phases, which vary in terms of time frames, depending on the severity of the injury, but also the quality of the wound healing process that your client is experiencing. The first one is the bleeding phase, so the very early acute phase, which is up to 4 to 8 hours. The next is the inflammation phase, which can go from around the first 2 to 3 days up to several weeks, again, depending on the severity of the injury. The proliferation stage goes from 24 to 48 hours up to 2 to 3 weeks, and then remodeling to the final stage, which is then from 1 to 2 weeks up to 18 months, depending on the severity. And here are some examples, that's foods that can support that inflammation phase. So we have avocado, sunflower seeds, garlic, flax seeds, turmeric, berries, pineapple, and walnuts. So within those, we have lots of vitamins and minerals. We've got some of the omega-3s, omega-6s, some of the anti-inflammatory foods such as turmeric and bromelain. So good variety of fruits to help support that early phases of inflammation. And then following that through the proliferation and the remodeling phase, it's important that our clients experience and eat an adequate amount of protein. So a good variety of protein, as we discussed earlier in the presentation, a good variety of fruits and veggies in lots of different colors to ensure they get lots of vitamins and minerals, a good variety of fats, including the omega-3s and the omega-6s, an adequate amount of carbohydrates for that particular person, and then also plenty of water. So really it's about eating a good variety of foods, lots of fruit and veggies in different colours, and keeping hydrated. When we're discussing the phases of healing and nutrition, it's also worth discussing oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is the disturbance in the balance between the production of free radicals and the antioxidant system. Free radicals are basically molecules that go around stealing atoms from our cells and our tissues. And this can then damage the cells. It can also affect our DNA. So it's important to have as few free radicals within our tissue as possible. Factors that can affect the production of free radicals are things such as stress, poor diet, toxicity within the body. As sports massage therapists, what we can do is recommend good nutrition that is high in antioxidants and then focus on other ways to reduce oxidative stress, looking at the different factors that reduce wound healing because they will help reduce that oxidative stress also. And examples of antioxidants are things such as cinnamon, berries, and kidney beans. And there are lots of different foods that have antioxidants in them. And it's important to discuss this with our clients about different ways of increasing the amount of antioxidants within our body. And the final part of this presentation is about how to discuss nutrition with your sports massage clients. The best way to start is discussing all of their lifestyle factors within your subjective assessment when you first meet them. Find out whether they have lots of stress, whether they smoke, do they drink lots of alcohol, what their nutrition is generally like, are they moving? So all those different lifestyle factors that can really help or hinder the healing process. And then that leads into finding out about their nutrition in more detail. And it's a really important question to ask your clients when they've been experiencing an injury. When it comes to food suggestions, you can help suggest foods that support healing based on what you know. So looking at the anti-inflammatory foods, increasing in antioxidants, drinking lots of water, getting some good quality proteins and fats. You're within your capacity to be able to recommend that. And you could also let them know that different types of foods can actually hinder and impair their healing, such as processed foods, foods in high fats and high sugar. We aren't dietitians or nutritionists, and we can't prescribe diet, supplements, or food plans, but we can recommend eating good quality food and point them in the direction of research and maybe a nutritionist or a dietitian if they need a little bit more support in that area. So if you're not sure about something, always refer on. It's best to do that and work closely with a dietitian or a nutritionist to help support that client further. And here are some references for the presentation and other areas for further reading and learning too.